Wait for it. Wait for it. Let your ADD get the best of you. Wait for it. G'day, hi and welcome. Alright, okay. Oh, you're cooking. Hey, what kind of quality show is this? Don't answer. Don't answer. This is a. I can imagine half of you could come up with some descriptive ways to describe this show. I'll be on the ground in the fetal position. Stop it! You're hurting me. Stop critiquing my show. All right, today. Wow. Okay. Oh, so sore, so stiff. Did a roof in 3 hours yesterday. Last year it took me 8 hours. It was half the snow, but the snow this year, the good news was most of it. There was a lot of snow this year. Right now it's like crazy warm up there. And so the snow is dying. It's like it must be like +8 out there or something like that. It's going to be like that till I think this afternoon, then back to deep freeze. But yesterday I did the roof that I did last year. He had brand new freaking shingles on it this year, so that was good. So there wasn't as much ice because like the heat loss and whatever. And there was only about half, and most of it was powdery. I didn't hardly use the scoop at all. I mainly used just my regular like aluminum shovel with the extra long handle there. I just sit there, shoosh, 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 like I was paddling a canoe, walking back and forth on the roof. The very last on the back I had to leave, and I used the roof rake, and I left about that much, right? Because it's brand new shingles, right? So I left about 2-3 inches over the entire roof. But with the sun out a bit today, with the wind, with it being warm, that'll basically clear off the roof. But the guy said, I said last year it took me 2 days to clear off the back deck. He goes, oh no, I'll leave the back deck for me and my buddies. I'm like, are you sure? You say, yeah. So I was talking to him this morning. I can only stay here till I gotta be back up home there for noon so I can get paid. But he was like, yeah, no, leave it. So I said, good morning. I was like, good morning. He's like, good morning. I said, do you like the present I left you? He goes, oh, wow. It was like there was probably 5 feet of snow on the deck. So like that's going to be real bitch to shovel that today with it being warm. That's a lot of weight. Like I didn't mind doing it, but I was done at 3 hours. And my dad, when he dropped me off, I'm like, oh, I'm going to be here all. I looked at it, it's about half, so I figured it's going to take me at least. I was going to go from 10 o'clock to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I told him, don't bother coming back. He goes, you want me to check on you at noon? I said, no, because I think he more wanted to do it just in case I fell off the roof and died or something, right? But I'm like, no, come and get me at 4. I'm good. I was done. I'm like, it must be about 3:30. I knew I was done early, but I was like, it must be about 3:30. I looked, it's like 1 o'clock. I'm like, what? What? I'm a good worker, but I mean, like, that was a little faster than I anticipated. Two shingles came off the roof. I think what it was is that because I was talking this morning, like when they came off, like I didn't go all the way down, so I'm thinking these were shingles that were left on the roof from because the guy did he was telling me, yeah, he goes, it probably you probably didn't pull one out, but the only thing I could think of was like right at the edge that when the roof rake came by, even though it was high, like the chunk that came off probably had ice in it and pulled off. Not one, but two of these roofing shingles, right? Brand new shingles. So I told him about it. Like I won't lie about it. I said, yeah, 2 came off. I said, I don't know. They came off really easy, so I'm assuming they were probably just ones that were left on the roof. I've yet to see a roofing crew go like actually clean the roof perfectly. Like it's like you go. It's like 3 years later, there's still like little bits cuts still on the roof that haven't blown off yet. So I told him keep them just in case, and he goes, "Yeah, I'll get the guy to put it back up there." But that's why you leave that much on your shingles, right? Maybe the guy forgot the what do you call it, air nail it or whatever. air staple it onto the roof properly or whatever. So it could be that too, right? Like, you're gonna miss some. I think you just go, and then you stop, you reload, and you think, okay, I started here, but you got a whole section there this long that you didn't do, and you don't remember it. Those are the scary ones, because those are when you're walking on the roof. Those are the ones that pull out right away while you're walking. Yeah, pretty scary. I may possibly have one more roof to do this season. I don't know. It depends on Paul. I won't let him do it by himself because it's too hard for one man. But that roof is a lot easier to do. It's a little bigger. I don't know. I'll be about the same size. But if it was like warm like this, yeah, you don't want to do roofs on a warm day like this. No way. That snow gets so heavy so fast when it's like just full of water. And that's what happened to me last year. Because last year was near the middle of March when I did it, and there was a lot more snow on there. There was about 4 feet. Right now there was about maybe 2.5. And most of it came off really nice big chunks, big styrofoam chunks. So I was really happy with that. He was happy, so yeah. So I'll get paid today. So today's the 28th. So last night I was too tired to read. I didn't read anything, but I want to finish this book today. I got 130 some odd pages to read tonight. So plus my book. I wanted to finish my book, but if I finish my book a couple of days later, like I couldn't even read my own book last night. It was just like I was just way too sore, way too tired. It's so labor intensive, right? But when I was done, we'll get to the This Week in World Crazy in a second there. When I was done, I was like, well, I couldn't call my dad or nothing, so I said, well, I could wait around for 3 hours for him, or I could just start walking. And I started walking. Because I thought the odds of somebody I know coming along with a pickup truck and picking me up, just where they're going to pick me up like 2 hours into the walking or 20 minutes, right? And it turned out I got lucky, and Nico came by at 20 minutes. He comes down the road with his plow guy. Richie, what are you doing? He's French here. He's really French. I'm like, walking home. What's your truck? I said, they're all broken. Oh, I said, are you going coming into Dad? He goes, yeah. He goes, yeah. So he's got the salter on the back, but we were able to get the roof rake in there in my scoop and my shovel, and he's like, you were going to walk out? I said, yeah. So that 3 hours a kill. He was, he's like, well, yeah. He goes, yeah, you'd probably make it back home by then, yeah. But he goes, I can't believe you were going to walk. He goes, I was coming down. He says, it looked like you were pulling like a sleigh or something. I was trying to figure out what you were. And there was deer all over the road yesterday, I guess because it was mild out, whatever, right? And yeah, so that was my adventure yesterday. So he gave me a lift. He was going to go up on the mountain there. But he's like, he goes, I said, you can drop me off at the store. I said, that's no problem. I really appreciate it. He goes, oh, no. He goes, I'll take you home like an extra 2 seconds. So, yeah, so it was, yeah. But he was just like, you were going to walk home? I said, I have a good story for everybody. Yeah, that crazy bastard was going to walk home. And it's like me, I'm either on a bicycle, walking, but like pulling a snow scoop, a shovel, my work bag with some water, Pepsi in it, whatever. And then the roof rake on my shoulder. I was going to make her out there. Yeah. Would have been 3 hours of work for 3 hours of walking. Oh. My dad gave me a lift there, and he was going to come back and get me because I didn't want. I thought I was going to be there for at least 6 hours, so I couldn't board his truck for 6 hours. I got the church to possibly do tomorrow. I don't know. If it stays really mild today, maybe get lucky and no shoveling to do whatsoever. A, it hasn't snowed much, and B, it's really warm and stuff like that. So I'm hoping that, because if they're going to be in the church tomorrow, they might not be in the church tomorrow, so I could probably leave it too. If not, I'll borrow my dad's truck in the morning and then go out. But anyway, yeah, so I didn't make as much money as I thought, but my body's kind of like, it's like, okay, yeah. 3 hours of that was hard enough on me yesterday. It was hard. Like, it wasn't all powder. It was more like styrofoam flakes. So there was still a lot of work. But yeah, I barely used my snow scoop. My snow scoop's too big. I got to get one of those medium sized or small ones. Everybody gets the big one. Don't get the big one. They're good if it's just powder, but when you're on the roof, they're too hard to manhandle, and you got to watch out when you got a full load of snow in there, and the snow's starting to get a bit heavy. It'll take you off the roof with it, right? So like you go like that. You never shuck your hands like that because that's why my elbows are all screwed up over the years. You just go nice and gentle, and if it stops at the edge, you just leave it at the edge. You can pull it off with the roof rake. If you don't have a roof rake, it means you got to get closer to the edge and just easily push it off, right? And that's probably why my rotator cuffs are not as sore as I thought today. But anyway, that's 10 minutes of your life you're not going to get back. So let's get into the, anybody that's like the first time you're in on this channel, I kind of like give you leisure news, right? So this week in World Crazy is kind of like, you're going to get everything, maybe you don't care how I'm doing, I'm sure, but you're going to, I'm going to make sure you know anyway, so Anywho, okay, guys, you remember when I predicted at the beginning of the month that there would be like 10 years worth of craziness within the first 2 months of 2026? Did I not call that right or what? We got a new war brewing. This one's kind of a bit strange. It's instead of Pakistan and India, it's Pakistan and Afghanistan. They've been fighting with the Taliban now. I guess it goes back. Like, I mean, it's not new. But I guess because the Taliban was so preoccupied under the the U.S. occupation that they didn't have time to fight with Pakistan. So now they're at least they're back to their old ways anyway. So I don't know what all the yeah. So I don't know. The Taliban's pretty fucking hard to take out. That's those bastards they took out the Mujahideen, which are still around in small numbers. The Taliban mainly absorbed them. The Taliban, I think, they're going to be around for centuries. Like, I don't see, unless the Middle East gets turned to glass at some point, if you know what I mean. I really don't see them going anywhere for centuries. I give them 100 years, and they could possibly rule the entire region. It'd be between them and the Shia, you know what I mean? The Shiites with the Iranian. So there'll be like just two Middle Eastern countries, basically Iran and Afghanistan. Could you imagine Afghanistan becoming a superpower? I could see it happening. Like, look, the Houthis in 2009, when they were being bombed under Barack Obama, they had nothing. Now they're building anti-shipping missiles and cruise missiles and shit. You know what I mean? Iran in 2009, they barely had any technology at all. And look at them now, like they're going to be, they're like setting up air defenses. Now they're getting some help from the Chinese and all that, but we'll get into all that. And the Russians, but even so, they're the powerhouse in the air. The only other military in the region that would rival Iran is really Turkey. Like Israel, yeah, Israel has nukes, but like even if Israel fired off all of its nukes, they're not going to take out 91 million people. You know what I mean? They can take out a lot of people, but they're not going to take out the entirety of Iran. It would take the entire world's nuclear arsenal to be able to do that. But hopefully they doesn't get to that. Saw a nice debate between Canadian Prepper and another guy, a guy that older guy, I can't remember what his name was, but completely taking it to poor Nate there. He was like saying, no, you're wrong. This is all just posturing, whatever. But it's cool to see how other people think, and they both handled it like gentlemen. Yeah, he took a couple of jabs at him or whatever. But Nate held his ground pretty good. One thing I like about Nate is that whether you think he's over sensationalizing it or whatever, I mean, yes, he's making his bread and butter off of it. Who might when I had my World War III updates, I was the #1 guy in the world for that. At the time until my channel got taken out, right? My whole channel. And but I never sensationalized quite as much, as a critique to poor Nate. But because him and I used to talk all the time in the back channels and whatever. And I'm glad he's made it as far as he did. But it's also big of him to bring somebody on that has a completely 180-degree view of the situation. And I like that because I respect that because most people's egos wouldn't allow that. You know what I mean? So to have somebody on that's telling you, no, you're wrong, and here's why. I don't care about you telling me I'm wrong. I just want to know here's why, because the thing is, it might offer like, and I pray the other guy is right. Like, I think Nate's the same way. He probably, yeah, I hope I'm wrong and he's right. You know, but if what I'm taking away of it, like there's a lot of different takes. You know, like if you're still going with it's a 4D chess move and all that stuff, is that possible? It's possible. Is it likely? You know, or is this just like escalation? You know, and doubling down, you know, making it worse. Like Trump truly believes like what he does. It's the moon over Parador, guys. If you haven't seen the movie, you've got to watch Raul Julian, Richard Dreyfuss, Moon over Parador, and it's the Raul Julian part that Trump is playing, where he makes this grandiose threat, and then it's always an empty threat, right? It's a good movie, you know. Like you know, it's kind of like a comedy, you know. Well, sort of, but it's like a comedy drama, whatever. But yeah, but it's the exact. It's what Trump is doing, and everybody's calling his bluff on everything. You know what I mean? Like it's. I'm not the anti-Trumper that just hates him because the TV told me to hate him. I'm judging the man by his actions, right? And his actions are telling me he's you can't do everything wrong. I'm not going to say he doesn't know what he's doing, because he knows exactly what he's doing. These neocons typically do, right? Everybody thinks they're just incompetent. They're not incompetent, because if they're incompetent, they'd fuck up and get it right in our favors once in a while, right? Never happens. He is following a plan. It's just, what is the plan? Well, part one of the plan is to destroy the U.S. economy, which will destroy. It's going to kill like, you know, at least a couple of million Americans just through the threshold of collapse, right? Look what's happening in Cuba. Like, how many people have died now because there's the hospitals can't be run because there's I know they still run on coal and stuff like that, but because there's no diesel, you know, natural gas and stuff like that in Cuba, like Trump has created a massive humanitarian aid crisis again. But the same thing that happened with the Yemenis, you know what I mean? Like, it's like under Obama, it's like, yeah, they create these crises, they go on, oh, we have to help these poor people over here and these poor people, but they're creating the same crisis. You know, they call like Assad a dictator, and yet they're starving 9 million people in Yemen. You know, and then doing all these airstrikes and stuff like that. You know, like it's so hypocritical. And once people figure that out, like, again, I can't understand how the military hasn't revolted yet. Right now they're comfortable and they still care about their paychecks. So I'm going to bash them on that, right? But anyway, I digress. Before we really get into the deep dive of everything that's going on, Iran, I'll try to get some other stuff out first, because again, I don't have a lot of time today. I got to be back up home by noon, so I can get paid, and I won't be able to make it. You know, I'm not going to come back down here again today, so I'll be down here tomorrow. But anyway, economically, I talked about Coca-Cola in the last one, how they're expanding, in Ontario there. There's a little bit of a friction going on between, I think it's Prince Edward Island and Alberta, because they got a whole bunch of LNG from Australia. But they're working on refinement of LNG. So I don't know the whole deal there. I know a lot of Albertans think that it's the East is always sticking it to them. It's not always about them. You know what I mean? Like, like, I'm not saying there isn't any of that going on, but it's not always about that. Like, for example, Quebec gets oil from Saudi Arabia and Norway, right? Which a lot of people complain about. And I know a lot of Albertans would say, well, why doesn't Quebec buy the oil from us? The better question is, why did we shut down the Hibernia plant? Because that was going to be the energy oil in the East, right? And they said it wasn't, matter. So we basically, because of Saudi Arabia and the U.S. petrodollar and stuff like that, made we like the Hibernian oil plant had its issues. There's no doubt about that. But that was basically energy sovereignty of the East, right? And of course, Quebec doesn't want to do that stuff because again, it's like the Bloc Quebec Party leader there, like he's starting to realize that nobody wants this fucking separation thing. Again, we've had enough of this fucking separation stuff, whether it's in the East or in the West, it doesn't matter. Just fucking, if you hate it here, fucking leave. You know what I mean? If you think you're gonna find a better place to live, go ahead. Like if you think it's gonna be better in the States, then fucking move to the States. You know what I mean? And that's what's happening with the Bloc Québécois. I mean, oh my God, they're gonna have a referendum by 2030. Yeah, and they're gonna lose because at the best, I think they might have between 18 and 23% support for separatism, right? Which is big, but it's nowhere near the numbers. And I think if you actually put it to the test and actually had the referendum, I don't think they would get more than 10 to 15% of the vote in Quebec. Because like most Quebecers are bilingual. Like 53% of Quebecers are bilingual. And almost all there's a lot of like very French nationalist people. I can't call them separatists anymore because these people, this is what happened, okay? In the city of Ottawa, okay? You have on this side of the Ottawa River is Ottawa, and then you've got Orleans, Cumberland. You go this way, you've got Carleton South. You go out this way, you've got what's called like Stittsville, Lanark County, Egansville, all that, and it spans a good distance, right? But the city of Ottawa, you got Barhaven in between there. You've got Merrickville. You've got Maxville, where the Scottish Highland Games are, something. All these old towns, and if you follow it far enough, you end up down in Belleville and then Kingston and all that, down near the Thousand Islands, right? If you go Highway 16, you end up at the Thousand Island Bridge, and on the other side is Syracuse, New York. Right, so it's a good distance to all this, but right across the river is Hull, Quebec, and then you've got Aylmer, Quebec. These are really old. Like Hull is one of the founding cities of the area, right? Like, and then you go beside it, you got Gatineau. Well, Gatineau was where all the separatists were in 1995, but because of government workers being bilingual, almost all the government workers live in Gatineau, right? I mean, well, maybe most of them live in Ottawa, but a lot of them live in Gatineau. So they went from voting Bloc Québécois to Liberal and NDP mostly, right? Because they're government workers predominantly, right? Makes sense, right? Most government workers don't vote Conservative because you can lose your job. But under Carney, you might lose your job through austerity. Anyway, I know Carney's been doing a bit of that. Now, the immigration issue we're going to get to in a second, but it's really front and center, guys. Like the momentum, believe it or not, is on our side. Yeah, it's very blackpilling to say, yeah, they haven't stopped. They're still doing what they're doing, but they're doing less of what they were doing, right? So in other words, the pendulum is swinging slowly. Will it be fast enough? That is the critical thing. I think, like, for example, Danielle Smith with having the referendum on immigration, because like Alberta is now what $9 billion over, they're running a deficit, and a lot of that has to do with all these. They normally would take 50,000 people a year. Now they've taken like 150,000 people a year. Now it's overwhelmed their schools systems. Even Danielle Smith said it. She's like, some of these kids are coming in from places that they're not even toilet trained. Gee, I wonder what place that could be, right? Yeah. But that's the thing. Like they want to. Every province wants to control its immigration. Quebec sort of does it. Whatever. But getting back to the LNG gas thing, it does make sense to develop the resources in this side of the country, but we can't do it with like Ontario will do it, but Quebec, like I say, the Quebec. Like they're using the climate change stuff to hold back industry in Quebec. And plus, that's their main thing. Well, Canada's holding us back, therefore we have to separate. Sound familiar? Yeah. Now, with Alberta, they've got to diversify their economy because one of the big problems when the oil prices go low is you end up with big deficits because you can't, like they have to sell so much per day, or they're going to, like that's the problem with Alberta. being, their main number one driver is oil, right? But when you're in a trade war and you got all this other shit going on, and then global oil prices go low, it can be really, really bad, right? Personally, I'd love to see every Canadian province commit to using. It doesn't all have to come from Alberta, but like, use Canadian oil first. Oh, it's a little more expensive. Yes, but that allows us to develop our industry. So the question is, why haven't we done this? Well, OPEC is your answer. Justin Trudeau's dad, Pierre Elliott Trudeau, when he signed us onto OPEC, one of the agreements was to limit our refinement capacity. Hence why we don't have enough refineries. Well, we might. It's just, we need more refinement, right? We need a better setup. That's why we don't have all the LNG gas going out in the east, because it could be. Like Quebec has oil. It has probably as much oil as Alberta. It's just all the resources are left on the ground because the Bloc Québécois don't want to touch a single resource, right? So, and because of that, Quebec won't prosper, and because Quebec can't prosper, that's why we get transfer payments, right? So what Alberta should be doing is, Danielle Smith, to her credit, has been trying to get Legault to, hey, look, develop some of your resources, we'll help you. Then the argument will be, well, they're developing their resources to compete with us. No. Like every province needs to be able to carry their own weight somehow, right? If you could have a refinery in Quebec and use Quebec oil, or Labrador, Quebec, whatever, look, the Hibernia thing, I think, needs to be revisited. Why would we build Keystone Pipeline and not have Hibernia going, right? The plant opens, it closes. It's been like that since the late 90s when it opened. I remember I followed it pretty closely back in the day. But yeah, we need to nationalize stuff like that, because if you could get Newfoundland, which is the most sparse, even though it's a large province, PEI is the small, or Nova Scotia is the smallest one. But even though it's a large province, it's I think the least amount of population. There's more people, I think, in Nova Scotia than there is in Newfoundland. Like Newfoundland is like that's like there's nobody there. They're all on one side of the rock, and that's it. Pretty much. Like literally, if you look at a map of population in Newfoundland, like there's nobody there, and they have industry. You know what I mean? So like if we can get enough, but them it's the fishing thing, right? There's just too many fishermen. You know what I mean? They need to develop more industries because, look, the fact that we should be applauding Nova Scotia for trying to get its LNG, because if Nova Scotia can develop LNG stuff, and then we can pipeline more LNG to Nova Scotia, or maybe they have their own, their own supply of it, that creates a hub to the world. You know what I mean? And if Nova Scotia can do that, then they don't have to rely on transfer payments. And again, this is what I mean. Rising tide floats all boats. So you have to look at it, I think, a little bit different. So that's what I'm taking on that. But with everybody so polarized and ready to hate each other over everything just because my guy can do no wrong, your guy can do no right, I get all that, but it doesn't work. Moving completely different subjects. There's a lot of a reaction. I haven't watched all of it. I just haven't had the time because I've actually been busy the past couple of days. I haven't watched the Trump's State of the Union speech. I heard it dragged on, and it was typical Trump speak. Oh, we're winning, and all that stuff. Sounded like it was a lot of cope, a lot of bullshit. Yeah, okay. Pierre Poilievre apparently did a speech, and Tom Mulcair, of all people, a guy who I've met, and he's as smug as you think he actually is. In other words, he's an asshole. But one thing about Tom Mulcair is I don't particularly like his attitude. He's a crusty person. It's just his attitude, right? It was him and David Leving I used to always run into. And David Leving was the big separatist guy there. I hated him. But him and we debated a few times, and like we sit down in the bar, and I was, oh, I know, here's why you're wrong. And we'd sit there, we'd have a beer, here I am, like a 20-year-old, like talking to this politician, just like, well, no, but you claim this, and again, the amount of arguments I've had with separatists in the 1990s, it was like crazy. It was like every second time I go out, like, you know, the guy I'd argue with the most was my friend Etienne. He was a hardcore separatist. I was a Federalist, right? And I'd always like poke holes, but I was always trying to get like you got to get past the emotion of it, like the like we got to move forward into the future, And I've had French person after French person after French person say, "Look, I don't like the separatism thing. Like, I know one guy barely speaks a word of English, but he made damn sure his kids were bilingual." He goes, I want because he goes, it's great, yeah, if you're around Quebec City and you live around Quebec City or Trois Rivières, it's all French there. But he goes, you leave there, the rest of the world speaks English. You know what I mean? And he goes, like, there's no opportunity for my kids. You know what I mean? If they speak English, they can pretty much move it. You could move to Japan or China, okay, and still function in English. And almost all of Europe is bilingual. What does that tell you? I'm sure. Yeah, you'll go some places where okay, yeah, they don't speak a word of English. Yeah, but where are you more likely to be able to function with English? Like you go to Switzerland, Sweden. Almost nobody in the world can fucking speak Swedish. Like it's one of the hardest languages to do, next to Hungarian. But you go to Hungary, you go to Sweden. The two hardest languages I think in the world to speak, like just pronunciation wise, they all speak English. Finland. I think they say Finnish is harder than Swedish. I don't know. I'm not Finnish. I've tried. I've dabbled in a couple of Swedish words just to see if I could pronounce them. I was just like, no, I sound like a retard. It's like, yeah, like yeah. But Hungarian is supposed to be extremely, extremely hard. Turkish, Hungarian, that type of stuff. Yeah. But anyway, I digress. But English, everybody does. That's the universal language. So the thing is that Pierre Poilievre put out a speech, and even guys like Tom Moncur was saying he rather thought it was a great speech. So I'm wondering what I got a couple of clips up here. I want to go listen to it for myself, but it does sound like our country is having a bit of a I won't call it a coming to Jesus moment, but kind of like we're gonna have to figure this unity thing out. You know what I mean? Like like this, like everybody's sick of hyper partisan. Uh, you know, like there was a girl I was watching, and she was completely in tears, talking about the Tumbler Ridge massacre there with the trans dude, and she was like, she goes, it really touched her that Carney and Pierre put the politics away in solidarity, and they're actually holding hands as partners. You know what I mean? Uh, I know it sounds a little gay, but you know what I mean. Like there was a solidarity. I only caught a little bit of it, and I mean when you look at these men, like they actually when they're standing there, they look like they have souls. They don't just look like okay, we have to be here because we have to be here. Like they are clearly upset with what has happened. Like they're men that are trying to hold it together. You saw the same thing in Mexico with I guess it was a military general or whatever. He kind of breaks down a bit before he goes on to the whole ordeal with the shootout with the cartels. When he mentions a couple of his guys got killed, right? You can tell it hits him. You know what I mean? And people, like when they see that, they can see that, okay, there's a sense of humanitarianism there. Even if there's a lot of things we can bitch about. But that's where when you don't see that at all, like Trump with Cuba, Marco Rubio with Cuba, you have children that are dying and starving right now. And then people in the hospitals that are, the doctors can't take care of them because the power's out. And who did that? That's Trump. Now that said, remember when I was bitching about the U.S. pirate navy and how that would escalate and create a standard? Well, it looks like now you got the Cuban pirate navy. Now, everybody commented the same thing. So a Cuban boat, basically Coast Guard, got into a shootout with a boat from Florida, and it had apparently Cuban nationals on it or Americans, we're not sure. And they blew the boat out of the water. I think the captain of the Coast Guard cutter was injured in the shootout, right? And a lot of people thinking CIA. Like these were going to be the agent provocateurs coming in, kind of like what they tried in Iran, right? So Trump's going on about how Cuba, we're going to do regime change in Cuba, blah blah blah. You know, through bullying tactics. Well, people just double down. They don't. They're not going to give in. You know, like Trump is wielding power that he thinks he has over people, but he doesn't. People are around the world are standing up to the United States, and rightfully so, because if they don't, they're going to die anyway, right? Iran being probably the shining beacon. Not that I'm pro Iran, but what I'm saying is almost everybody outside the United States is like, yeah, well, they're being attacked on behalf of Israel. I mean, like everybody knows that Israel runs the United States. That's not a conspiracy theory. It's not a trope. It's pretty darn when 2/3 of your Congress are dual citizenship Israelis. I mean, yeah, and every policy favors Israel. I think it's safe to say that Israel runs the country. You know what I mean? And whatever. But we're going to get into all that anyway. Other things going on. There was something else I wanted to cover. The Epstein stuff. I made a video the other day. It went on almost 3 hours. Me just ranting about that. But that's getting, like that's not going away. Obviously, that's not going away. What do you call it? Prince Andrew or whatever. He got arrested not because over the Epstein things, not because of diddling young girls, but for possibly selling secrets to the Israelis, right? But Epstein clearly isn't a Mossad asset. And a lot of people out there, something I wanted to address, this whole Epstein still alive thing, and I started thinking about it. There is one possibility that nobody talks about, because, I saw a great meme and it goes like this. We have politicians lecturing other politicians, or politicians being lectured on Epstein by politicians who are on the Epstein list. Is that not the thing? Is that not what's going on right now? You know what I mean? And then Pam Bondi coming out saying, well, if we arrested everybody, it'd collapse the whole system. Well, I think we all agree. It's a hit we're willing to take. Yes, it'll hurt, but if it saves all those children, again, as we speak, until we get brave law enforcement military and they stop acting a coward, you need to, if you've got superiors that tell you not to investigate the Epstein stuff, I think I know you need to know where to turn your investigation is on them. Why would they cover for that? Why would anybody cover for something that's, and look, people are reading these Epstein files, okay, and they've put out the tame stuff first, okay. So if child, rape and child, sacrifice, and cannibalism is the mild stuff. Well, how much worse can it get? You've got people they're so upset by reading these files. They're like, these people they're demons. And the longer we take to again, how could we have 3 million files out and a decade of knowledge of this and not a single person go to jail, right? Other than Wayne Maxwell and Epstein, right? They're not going to take the fall for the whole fucking thing. That's what they always try to do. Well, we arrested these two, therefore everything's okay. No, as we speak, there are children being tortured and raped right now by these fucking monsters because they get away with it, right? When the judges and lawyers, and again, Ryan Dawson made a good point when he was talking to Henrik on Red Ice about this. He goes, look, the people on the Epstein file, okay, they're not nurses and waitresses and plumbers and electricians and school teachers and construction workers and lumberjacks and retail workers. They're judges, lawyers, media people, politicians, royals. They're those people, right? Which the question becomes, why do they do this? What's wrong with them? And some people, well, it's not about the power and money because they already have all the power and money. At this point, it's like for them to get their rocks off, they have to do something, sick and depraved, right? Yeah, probably. It's like the movie's Hostel. It's like that. And that stuff is probably true. You know what I mean? Or Eyes Wide Shut. Like that stuff is probably true. Well, it's not probably. It's true. It's just, where is it happening and who's doing it, right? Because, I mean, the Epstein files kind of proving that that's true. Did Anne Hake get eaten by Ellen DeGeneres? I don't know. Because Anne Hake died a very strange fucking way, didn't she? You know what I mean? If you remember that actress. So that is it possible? I don't know. It's highly possible, but is it? You know, there's a lot of stuff also being put out there to. Okay, this is the tactic: is they find something that they can't hide. So then, like Alex Jones or whatever would do this, is put or like put out like all this really bizarre thing. So it's like the David Icke stuff. I'm not saying David Icke is in on it, but they let it go so that it's like, okay, here's something that's true. Now let's let the conspiracy theorists put something so fucking bizarre around it that people will just dismiss it, right? And that's what they're going to try. That's what they're trying to do with the Epstein thing, but it's not really working because when you read the documents, and remember, I said this would happen. That at some point you would get vigilantes if they can't take these people out legally. They're going to tar and feather them by just leaking shit out. Because the person that leaks the like actual unredacted files, right, which happened, that person would be liable. So they have to make it look like an accident. Say, okay, well, at least we got to have people know who these people are and what they're doing. So when they put out these 3 million pages, hopefully people downloaded them right away because the first batches that came out, like they were redacted, but when you downloaded the redactions weren't there. They forgot to download the second part of the algorithm to make that happen or whatever, right? So hopefully people have it completely mask off. You know what I mean? But that said, the thing is that it is upsetting a lot of people. Like people realize that oh dear God, this is real. You know what I mean? And like the left. One good thing about the left is welcome to the show, so to speak. But one of the things is that when Pizzagate came out, anybody right wing that was talking about it, which the right went with it right away, they were just like, oh, well, that's conspiracy theory. That's Alex Jones stuff. That's basically because Alex Jones, he has fucked up a bit too. You know what I mean? Like with the. I'm not saying nobody should question things or whatever, but there's certain things that he's done that it's like, okay, rather than push that to that level, state your case, leave it be, and move on to the next thing, and let people decide for themselves, rather than tar and feather and muddy the waters, right? So the thing is that we got a situation where people around the world on the left and on the right are now finally realizing that no, the Comet Ping Pong Pizzagate stuff was real, and that led to the Epstein stuff being released, right? And it's real. Okay, so did Epstein kill himself? No, he was either murdered or he was taken to probably a safe house. That's my guess. So if he's alive, it could be one of two scenarios. He's alive because he's a Mossad agent. They just let him go and whatever he's living, and all the conspiracy theorists are right. Or B, which is more likely, he made a deal. Like where are all these videos of Epstein talking about all the people that like blowing the whistle on all these people, right? Like how does Israel have such involvement in the Epstein stuff? How do they know about all the files and who's in them? You know what I mean? Is that how Netanyahu's blackmailing Trump? I don't think that Netanyahu's blackmailing Trump. I think Trump is just in on it as a neocon Zionist. The same, like he hasn't, like he doesn't look disturbed about what he's doing. You know what I mean? It's he's in on it. He's in on it. Trump is a bad guy the same way Netanyahu is, right? So the thing is that no, maybe they've got him for test, hit him away so he can testify, right? I mean, wishful thinking, but it's hard to say. Like is there a single honest judge or lawyer out there? I don't know. You know what I mean? At this point, I just don't know. Like you're telling me nobody can prosecute these people? Absolutely none with all that evidence. And the thing is I thought that was all the pages. No, there's another 3 million pages I think to go. So you have that much information that much data, like 3 million pages, guys, that's a lot. That's a lot of fucking paper. You know what I mean? Like to have that tells me that you've gotten that data, okay, and then you give the people decades to get rid of all the evidence, right? Um, yeah, people are pissed. People are pissed. You're going to see vigilante justice at some point. I'm not calling for it, but I don't see how it doesn't happen because what I see coming is basically law enforcement guys. Like, trust me, every cop that's been on the job for maybe more than a year, 2 years, knows who every corrupt cop is in the force. They know every corrupt judge. They know exactly what they're up to. Yeah, there's the wall of blue or whatever. Yeah, sure, I get it. But at the end of the day, they know, right? So you're telling me that not a single cop is going to go and arrest these people because their police chief told them not to touch it? Yeah, like they have no balls whatsoever. You're telling me the military, that would know about this stuff as well, are not going to arrest a single person? Look, we're probably going to have a military coup of some sort in the States down there. I don't think it's going to happen up here in Canada. It could happen, but I doubt it. Carney's not off the deep end enough to, like most people are actually, it's kind of like, will there be an election up here? I really don't see it. I know everybody thinks, oh yeah, we're going to have an election in the spring. But the Conservatives would be back right where we're at. Carney's too close. The floor crossing, yeah, that's something that I don't. All these Conservatives crossing the floor, but I'm starting to think that it's a Conservative plan. They probably make concessions with Carney. Say, look, we'll give you your majority by floor crossing. You do this for us. That's what I think is going on. Now they're not going to tell you this. They're not going to tell you this. It's dirty politics. I'm sure it's treasonous to do that. But like floor crossing to me is treason. You got elected by people to be a conservative, and then you're going to spend the rest. You need to have. You need to either step down and resign your seat and go back to an election, and be voted in as a liberal, or like this whole floor crossing thing should never have been allowed ever. It's a betrayal of your constituents. You know what I mean? But I digress. So I don't know. Carney, I think he needs one more floor crosser to get a majority. But the thing is what a lot of people don't understand is that he doesn't really need the majority at this point. If you're like two guys away, it's not worth having an election and possibly lose like 10 or 15 seats, right? Where all you got to do is basically Carney to pass any bill has to just convince 2 to 3 other people from another party, from the other parties to vote in favor of him. That's it. You might as well say he has a majority, kind of like Justin Trudeau with the NDP in the last time. He had a de facto majority. It was like basically the NDP backed him on everything, and it cost them their party because of that. Thank God, wipe them out, right? Unfortunately, we still got the Liberals though. But there's a lot of dumb stuff that Carney's doing. There's no doubt about that. I don't need to tell you guys. On some, but there's a lot of good things he's doing too, especially with the diversification of trade. Like right now, we're like, and again, I understand the man on the street is not feeling it because it is going to take like 4 or 5 years before you start to see the benefits of what he's doing. But some stuff is right away, such as apparently cruise ship tourism is like BC is the place where it's at. Mind you, BC has a lot of freaking problems, right? With the drugs. That's why I'm not a libertarian. All this libertarian bullshit and all that. Let's liberate the drugs. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that's all it's been about. Libertarianism just doesn't work. You can't just you have to have a cohesive society. You can't just have anarchy. It just doesn't work. Free market capitalism doesn't work. It just creates monopolies. And then you eventually end up in the situation we're in. You know what I mean? That's where free market capital, communism obviously doesn't work. So I don't know what the actual solution is, but it's going to have to be something balanced, like balanced trade, fair trade, not free trade, but fair trade. Till we have that, we're going to have a lot of chaos. But yeah, there's good and bad. Like for example, the wineries in BC. Some of them, some close. There's some that are closing down, but yet it's the one of the best wine years they've ever had was 2025 because of the tariff thing, right? And basically the boycotting of U.S. Wine, which has hurt California. Um, and benefited us. But there's also the people that were exporting predominantly to the United States. Well, they kind of took a hit, so they either had to downsize or whatever. So it's messy no matter how you look at it. But on the overall, the industry is up. It's at record highs. Same with our tourism; it's the highest it's ever been in our recorded history. So those are good things that offset some of the bad things, right? Doug Ford, he's holding ground. Like Ontario should have collapsed by now. Like Ontario has the same problem that Alberta has. It has all the eggs in one basket, so to speak, with the whole idea of basically the auto industry, right? So, but that said, that's switching as well. And especially right now, we've signed a deal with South Korea. I'm not sure if it was for the mobile howitzers or for the submarine deal. I don't think we did the submarine deal yet because it's still in competition with Germany. The Saab Gripens, I talked about that new Rolls Royce engine. They've got about 400 hours of testing on it. It's basically a game changer. It allows aircraft to be airborne or at operational temperatures and ready to fly within 97 seconds rather than the F-35 taking 15 minutes to get ready to fly in the Arctic, right? So that's a game changer. That's a huge game changer. The Soft Gripen deal is not done yet, though, and I think they have to make sure that the engine can completely replace the General Electric engine that the Swedes are using because they're thinking like the Swedes are completely rethinking their entire vulnerability of having U.S. technology in their equipment because uh, the U.S. can they've already blocked the sale of some soft Gripens to other countries because of that, right? Saying no, you can't sell it because our engine's in it, right? So the Swedes are like, well, we have to go with somebody more reliable and less volatile than the States. So right now, like worldwide, like the United States is just losing trade left, right, and center. But that is the grand design. That's how you collapse the economy, right? Yes, Trump is going for a collapsed economy. Why? Because they want to bring in the CBDCs. They want to do all these other things. Uh, yeah, it's horrible what they want to do. It's a reset. It's the reset. It's Klaus Schwab's reset. That's what Donald Trump is doing. So when you think these people are on your side, they're clearly not. Like their actions tell you that they're doing exactly what Goldman Sachs is telling them to do, and the Federal Reserve, right? They're doing exactly that. There's not a single politician in the world that's going against the banking system. There's not a single one. They call it out, and they make it on a good show, but they don't actually do anything about it. So yeah, so there's a lot more I could cover here, but I don't have a lot of time. So I'll get to the Iran thing because that's probably what you want to know about the most. Okay, here's the thing. Canadian Prepper's guest was out there saying that no, this is all for show. Basically, you have to make the distinction between nuclear enrichment and nuclear weapons. Okay, I can make that distinction. And what Trump is after is that they don't get a nuclear weapon, right? So it's not really about the enrichment. But that's what, Nate was right on that. But yeah, but that's why they bombed them the first time around last year. And after 12 days, it was just kind of like the grand finale was a few B2s. With a war that was not only telegraphed, like this is the most telegraphed war we've ever seen. So, that does, to an analyst, I can see how they could see that, say that, yeah, this is all posturing. But is it posturing or is it dangling bait in front of a, red meat out there saying, okay, well, let's just, put the aircraft carrier that has plumbing problems, at a dock somewhere within striking range of the Iranians. Okay, let's put a lot of aircraft, like 250 aircraft in the area, and a whole bunch of stuff on the ground, neat rows so that when the Iranians fire their rockets, they can hit stuff, and then we have pretext, and then we can go and really invade them. But like it's like I said, I pointed this out too. What the other guy was saying, like, look, the aircraft, like, they're going to have to fly with like 3 fuel tanks on there to be able to do round trips, because the cruise missiles alone, if you fire them from too far of a distance, they'll have the Iranians will have all the time in the world to intercept them. And if we go by the Syrians, which the Iranians are much more advanced than what the Syrians were, their interception rate was about 50%. That's just because I don't think they had enough air defense. But they had about between cruise missiles coming in from Turkey, mainly coming in from Israel. The air defense system was about 50% shoot down rate. And we know the Iranians are way more, they've got way more radar systems and stuff like that. Plus, they have the Chinese intelligence system, kind of like what the United States does for the Ukrainians. This is what China is doing. So China has surveillance warship or whatever in the area. So does Russia. I think what they're going to do is just use it for tracking. There are 3 Kylo class submarines. Some people say, oh, they've detected one at the dock. Yeah, it's probably loading up, ready to go to sea. And a Kylo can sink an entire carrier fleet, which is typically 14 to 28 ships. They can sink at least 18 boats with one well-placed torpedo. They have 18 torpedoes, right? But they also have cruise missile capabilities too. And I think what the Kylos would be used is, okay, they'll be like, 100 miles out, 200 miles out, well beyond the range of U.S. torpedoes. Fire just cruise missiles, these anti-shipping missiles. Basically, at that point, yeah, there's 3 carrier groups. You got 3 submarines. 2 are reported down for maintenance, but you've got about anywhere from 23 to 50 midget submarines, which hold 2 torpedoes each. But those are going to be in the strait. They might go out after the fleet, but they have to get pretty damn close to fire a torpedo to the point where they'd probably be destroyed before they could get there. But if they're waiting in ambush, even if they get destroyed, if they get off 2 torpedoes and one hits a destroyer, the other one hits an aircraft carrier, 1 torpedo will probably cripple an aircraft carrier. So then you lose the aircraft carrier. You know what I mean? But that said, it's the drones. The drones, I think the main thing they're going to be used for is to basically crash the radar systems on the destroyers and basically blind them, right? And then you send in your cruise missiles and all that stuff, and the cruise missiles will make sure it works. Basically, the carrier fleets are like, I know a lot of people, oh, these are the most powerful. The Americans are still thinking in a World War II style warfare, right? The Iranians are not. The Iranians and the Ukrainians have changed warfare. With drones and stuff like that, right? We see what new land warfare looks like. It's not the Battle of the Bulge with 1,000 tanks sitting there blasting away, or like we saw in Armenia and Azerbaijan when there was like the largest tank battle that took place outside of World War II was back in I guess it was 2015 or 2017 or 2019, whatever it was, when Armenia and Azerbaijan went toe to toe, and there was about 350 tanks, T-55s and T-63s and T-72s and whatever, blasting away at each other. Then suddenly Israel and Turkey back Azerbaijan with these little kamikaze drones, right? And they completely wipe out the Armenian tank forces. That changed warfare forever. Okay, it was proof of concept. And then Ukraine comes along, and now it's like drones. The Ukrainians spared a Russian soldier the other day. I guess she was a medic or whatever, and she was unarmed, and she was just, please don't kill me with the. I don't know. Well, maybe they did kill her. I don't know. But she's just sitting there going like this, like, please, making crosses like, just don't kill me, like I'm unarmed, I'm just a medic, whatever. So I don't know. Me, if I was a Ukrainian, I'd hate to do it, but I'm like, well, you know what I mean? You're on the battlefield. You know, you're going to get some equality. I'm sorry. You know, like I'd hate to do it. Yeah, it'd be hard to live with, but it's like if I let you fix those guys up, they're going to kill my guys. You know what I mean? That's the way I look at it. I have a total war mentality. Like von Bismarck, I think was right. It's just like no, you bomb everything. You know what I mean? You know, like the days of you know, knights meeting out in the middle of a field or whatever, the townspeople, like warfare for most of history was never carried out in the towns except for like, you know, Viking raids and shit like that. You know what I mean? You know, Mongolian raids or whatever. But that was different. That was raiding. That wasn't, you know, warfare. Like even here in Canada, like, you know, like it's like okay, the battles of you know Upper Canada and Lower Canada, uh, you know, like though they were all out in the field somewhere, the Plains of Abraham, legendary, you know, the Fields of Abraham. Um, you know, like the city, the towns didn't, you know, they didn't go through these, you know, they didn't see the war. You know what I mean? It was all World War One where it kind of starts to change, where you know the start, and then World War II was the big change where it's like, okay, yeah, now you bomb cities, now you bomb, you know, total war, right? So with all the buildup in the Middle East, so you have three carrier groups there, about 250 fighter jets, attack planes. You've got at least you know like you know 30 or 40 air tankers. Like I think the Iranians are gonna like strategy wise. Okay, first off, the tankers are probably the bigger one because even with the aircraft carriers can't be right off the shore. They're going to be so far back. Like right now, they're about 1,000 kilometers from Iran, right? Which means it's a one-way trip for an F-18. You know, so they need fuel to get there and back. So they're going to be basically air tankers. So I think Iran, you know, like is going to have to basically target the tankers first. You start taking out air tankers, you end the war because the to launch you'd have to bring like just for where the carrier groups are right now, right? You have to basically burn up all the fuel. Like an F-16 has a 600-mile range, you know, and then you add drop tanks, no problem. But then once you start putting drop tanks on there, even if you have range to get there and back, like Iran is a big country, you know, like you're not going to hit everything. You're going to be, yeah, you might be able to hit the coast, whatever. But like the logistics of it is basically, even if you have enough fuel to get there and back, you won't have enough of a payload to make it dent. You know, you send out all these aircraft and, you know, it's barely going to do anything. You know what I mean? It's barely going to do anything. And how many are going to get shot down in the process? So if you want a full weapons load, then what you're talking in is either moving the aircraft well into range, you know, well into range. So we're talking about like 200-300 kilometers off the coast, which gives them the range to get there and back. But they'll still need drop tanks to be able to, you know, have loiter time for more than 5-10 minutes, right? Which might be enough time to you know, fire the missiles or drop the weapons and take off. Like flying over Iran is suicide. You'd be shot down. The B-2s, everybody doesn't understand. The Iranians were tracking the B-2s without problem, no problem. And you say, well, okay, well, never mind the fighters. Just bring in the B-52s, which can fly, you know, the B-2s, and just let the heavy bombers and the B-1 Lancers. Yeah, but they need fighter escort. You know, you send those things in without fighter escort. The Iranians do have fighters that will. They don't. They you know they fly faster. Like the B-52s. Like you could you say what you want, but B-52s without escort. You could send up old F-4 Phantoms and F-14 Tomcats or whatever, or even F-5s. It doesn't matter. You don't even have to shoot them down with missiles. You can just strafe them with the 20 mils. You know what I mean? You know, like an F-4 Phantom with 3 drop tanks on it and 6 air-to-air missiles from the 1960s. That's look, flying B-52s over the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Like there was one day they lost, you know, the B-52s. they lost 5 of them in one day. You know what I mean? Like over Iran, you're good. They'll never get close. You know what I mean? Um, so if the strategy is for the U.S. to say, okay, well, we're just going to use, uh, the fighters just to escort the bombers halfway. No, you have to escort the bombers all the way there and all the way back. Now the B-2 is the door kicker, sure, but the problem with that is when you get the B-2 there. Okay, the B-2, if you have fighters escorting it, they're going to hone in on it, So you have to let the B-2 go in by itself. But now you're going into all these air defense systems, and you're not going to be able to fly below the radar. And if you fly below the radar, then anti-aircraft guns are going to get you. And if you fly above the radar, you know what I mean? But the other problem is that the Iranians, with the help of the Chinese, like the Chinese are basically, they've got assets and the reason that they're going to protect. They're basically giving the Iranians the information in the real time on the air bases. Look, once these guys start loading, like they can actually watch the Americans loading the weaponry and putting the aircrafts on the runways, saying, okay, these guys are ready to go for their mission. And I'm sure they've got like proxy groups in the area with, just binoculars and cell phones. yeah, they're loaded up. They're starting to take off now. Be ready. So as soon as they do that, and then there's the other thing, what I'm thinking what Donald Trump's plan is, but then again, hubris is a thing too, is this idea that Iran wouldn't use U.S. doctrine against them. Because right now, you got to think about this, okay? Yes, the Americans have about 2,200 fighters in current active service. Out of all the fighters they have, I don't know how they have in mothball, but probably F-14s are no longer in the picture. Most of them have been cut up. There was about 400 to 500 F-15s built, 1,500 A-10s built. Now, A-10s wouldn't last 10 seconds over Iran. Like Iraq, Iraq didn't have the air defense systems to deal with the Iranians or with the Americans, right? So the A-10, the last war it could fight was, Iraq and Afghanistan. Those were the last wars it could fight, because there was no air defenses, really. And the same with the Apache helicopters, which is about another 1,500 of those. Now, how many of those are in the region, I don't know. But Blackhawks, I think there's something like 6,000 of those were built. I don't know how many are left in service. Air tankers, I think they got about 100. It's not enough. You know what I mean? Like, I know what weaponry the Iranians have, too. Like, those old F-14s, yeah, they're old. But their version of the Phoenix missile, the AIM-54s, they've upgraded them to have even further range, right? So even if those old aircraft, they could shoot down B-52s. And if you shoot down the B-52s and you take out the aircraft carriers and the destroyers, like most of that stuff's going to get, the stuff in the sea can be hit by, again, if they have Dongfang 11 and Dongfang 17 hypersonic anti-shipping missiles, like the Iranians have all kinds of stuff. They only have to get lucky once. You're talking about, depending on how much is in the group, but if one carrier group's 14 to 28 vessels, okay, that's basically, we'll go on the low side, okay, out of the 260 warships, you know what I mean, and then supporting ships, I don't know how many the Americans have, but quite a few. But they don't have as many supply ships as they used to. They've all been, basically cut up for scrap because they mainly use ports to reload. So it doesn't matter if the Iranians get you on the reload, but if the Iranians say, you know what, they're all here right now. If we take out 3 carrier groups, the other 7 carrier groups won't be enough. you know what I mean, to take us out. By the time they get here, we'll be ready for them. Could you imagine Iran destroying all 11 aircraft carriers? Like, maybe, again, this would be a benefit to the U.S. because it's the cheapest way to decommission. Who cares if they kill all the people, right? That's the way these world leaders think. Henry Kissinger said it out loud. They don't care about soldiers. They're just cannon fodder. You know what I mean? Trump doesn't care about soldiers. The guy made a good point with Canadian Prepper. He goes, look, the caskets that come back or whatever, yeah, the politicians come out and the first few, and like, oh my God, here they are having this big ceremony and service. We've got to support our guys, blah, blah. But the other hundreds and thousands that come back, don't get any attention whatsoever, right? They do the PR or whatever. But the thing is this is Trump's war to lose, and he's already lost it. Like the Iranians aren't going to give the Americans an inch. Why? Because this idea of completely disarming Iran, because Israel said so. When the Iranians know that the Israelis can't fight more than 12 days, and that even if the Americans had the complete upper hand in the region, firepower-wise, they got maybe about 5 days worth, according to this other line, maybe 5 days worth of firepower. I'm like, and the fuel, like that's the big one, right? Like that aircraft carrier, it doesn't have to refuel because it's nuclear, but those destroyers do. You know what I mean? Like those, like you're talking every couple of days, you got to refuel those damn things. The amount of fuel that's just being burnt to get the stuff there, like that is a logistic feat in itself. You have to understand, and this is why I say all wars are, fake wars, and all wars are bankers' wars, and all wars are for Israel. Number one, well, look where the wars are and who benefits the most. Israel, right? And it's openly admitted stuff. But it's worse than that, because the thing is that Iraq and Afghanistan and 9/11 and all that stuff, like the COVID thing, like to have everything ready to go when it's time to go is years of planning. Like you have to build up enough fuel reserve to be able to fight a war for 19 years. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, at one point, yeah, the initial planning, but the first 6 months, like, look what happened to the Russians when they went in on a whim into Ukraine. I mean, there was columns of tanks sitting there, which would have been a great target practice for the Frogfoots or actual A-10s if the Ukrainians would have had them. They were sitting there for 3 days waiting for fuel, right? But that was the bluff charge. The idea was, well, we'll do this, it'll scare the Ukrainians so badly that they'll just surrender. The Ukrainians, holy fuck, they have the will to fight. You know what I mean? Shit, you know what I mean? Yes, the Russians are still winning and whatever, but, it's costing them for every inch. You know what I mean? But anyway, I digress. So let's get, okay, F-18s, 1,600 to 2,000 of those. F-16s, I think they're approaching 5,000 plus of those that were built. Don't quote me on it, but there's a lot of F-16s, but a lot have been sold off too. F-22s, I think you got like 200 or 300. F-35s, I think they're 500, maybe 600. So even at that, like B-2s, you got about 60 if they're all flying. B-117s, about 60 to 70 if they're all flying. SR-71s, there's a handful of those. I don't think they're in use anymore. U-2s, I think there's about 100. Comanche, there was 66 of those built. Those aren't in service anywhere anymore. You just never see them. Yeah, so the Americans don't have enough. They don't have enough to fight a war against 91 million people. They don't. And boots on the ground, even if you could get all 90,000, APCs, and you got 5,500 Abrams tanks max, that and about 2,000 of them that are currently in service. Most of them haven't been upgraded enough yet. You've got about 15,000 APCs out of that, and then MRAPs. So it's about 90,000 vehicles all in. But just the Abrams tanks, like even if you could get them on the shores of Iran without getting destroyed, again, the fuel, like those things get ungoverned. An Abrams tank can do 70 miles an hour, pretty impressive. But it has a short range because you're going to burn up 600 gallons every 100 miles or so to 200 miles. Like it really, logistics wise, no. And then the fact that the Iranians are just going to be hardened in, you know what I mean? And if they've got the multi-frequency radars that they have, that's what the Iranians domestically built. They can detect the stealth, but if they're getting, satellite data, from the Chinese or the Russians, letting them know where the Americans are about to strike, you know, the Iranians say, okay, they've got everything there. Okay, let's hit them while they're there. Like, what are they going to do about it? Like, if you destroy 250 aircraft on the ground and three carrier groups and kill all, like, tens of thousands of, like 30, 40, 50,000 people in a week in the Middle East and destroy every base. Like, look, Americans have already been killed in this conflict by what is recorded to be an Iranian drone, where they hit a base in either Qatar or where was it? Anyway, one of the allied Middle Eastern countries, which most of the countries said, no, you're not going to launch your attack. Like Saudi Arabia, you're definitely not launching from here because the Iranians will kick our ass if you do. But anyway, a drone like injured 7 U.S. soldiers and killed 3. This was about 2 or 3 days ago. And the day before, there was an Iranian helicopter shot down with a dignitary on there. And I guess in the counter, they killed a bunch of U.S. soldiers. You're not hearing a lot of news because that would be pretext, right? That's what the Israelis are looking for and that Trump is looking for. But it's like that just tells you that Iran right now is still hitting you tit for tat. You kill our guys, we're going to kill your guys. Now, some say that the Iranians shot down one of their own F-4 Phantoms because they basically, like, the Iranian strategy is make sure there's nothing in the sky so that, if we see anything in the sky, we know it's not ours, we can shoot it down. But they might have shot down one of their own F-4 Phantoms. But these F-4 Phantoms are old. They could have been a mechanical thing. We don't know. It's hard to say. But I could see how it could happen with, like not having perfect communications with each other. It's like, oh, there's a jet in the air. Let's shoot it down. That's our orders, right? Because like at 100 miles out, you're not going to know who the fuck it is, right? So just shoot it down anyway. So I don't know. Maybe that happened. But things are escalating. But Iran has the upper hand. Like everything that the U.S. has, every asset they have there is within the envelope of their missiles. And God knows how many they have, right? So you'd say, well, why? Maybe all this is for show, and what's really going to happen is just a massive drone swarm on all the air defense systems and radars. Sure, that can happen too. You know what I mean. But the thing is that the U.S. does not have the drone stockpiles that the Iranians have. But it doesn't really matter. The second the United States starts the war, the Iranians have already stated that we're not looking at this as limited strikes. You can call them limited strikes, but we're taking it as total war. Like last year, look, if you look at every war Israel has been in, the 67 war, the 73 war, the 6-day war, it's always like a couple of days or a week or two max, right? The Israelis really can't fight prolonged. They don't have the ability to do it. The Americans will not be able to take the Iranians. The Iranians will be the most technologically advanced military that the Americans have ever fought. And even if they're not up to the same par as America, equipment-wise, it's good enough equipment that you're going to take heavy losses. And it's more about the strategy. These low-tech kind of works no matter what rockets are a superior strategy than, like, why would you fly a fighter jet from one country to the next when you just fire a rocket? The rockets are like a tenth the cost of what the fuel is just for the jet, let alone the bombs. Like flying fighter jets don't make, modern warfare is going to be cruise missiles and drones and anti-drone technology. That's what's going to win wars. But the rockets, look, World War II style V1 and V2 rockets are kind of, refined. And, like, say, Scud launchers, that is the cheapest way to win a regional war. Now, it's a defensive posture. Do the Iranians have, intercontinental capability? I think they probably do. I think Trump was bullshitting and said, oh, well, they're developing a long-range missile to hit the United States. No, I think they already have it. It's the same like I've been saying about this whole nuclear program thing. It doesn't make any sense. Like, they're just using that as pretext. Because my hunch is like, okay, so your Iranian nuclear scientists for decades have been working with North Korean scientists who know how to develop their own nuclear weapons, right? And you're going to get all this technology know-how, and you're not going to buy any weapons from them. You know what I mean? Like, don't overthink it. It's like the Soviet Union, when it collapsed, a lot of warheads went missing, right? We know this. Why? Russians didn't put serial numbers on shit. And the thing is that it's, to me, it's as obvious as day that it would be a lot cheaper just to buy weapons from either the Russians, the North Koreans, and the North Koreans that they would sell, or even the Chinese, and just say, we'll have them. We won't have very many of them, but we'll have them. You know what I mean? To me, that makes sense. If Pakistan and India can get nuclear weapons, I'm pretty sure Iran already has nuclear weapons. It's just, if you look at the Iranian doctrine, they don't need it. Like I say, the rocket forces alone are going to wipe Israel off the map. And that is their biggest deterrent. It's a bigger deterrent than nuclear weapons. The deterrent is this: okay, you can attack us, U.S., but if you attack us, we're going to kill Israel. And there's nothing you'll be able to do about it. Like, whenever the Iranians say, okay, you know what? Sure, we might lose the war. It's the ideology of it. Like you can't intimidate Iran. Like, at this point, and not to mention they do have allies. Even if it's only the Houthis that help them out, the Houthis will probably take out a carrier group themselves. You know what I mean? They've got, cruise missile capability, maybe not to the same, extent that, the United States has, but they have enough cruise missile capability to do the work that they do. Like, they can hurt the Israelis bad. Like, they literally can wipe them out. And I'm thinking that that's probably what they're going to do when this kicks off. And I'm thinking that the reason why this is taking so long, a lot of people speculated, well, they were just waiting for the State of the Union speech, and then after that, they were going to make a go at, whatever. But it doesn't matter. Like Trump doesn't really care if they lose the midterms, because the goal is to destroy Iran. Like, it's not to help the United States. They don't care if neocon, like, it doesn't matter. Neocons are both sides of the aisle. It doesn't matter if you have Biden in there or if you have Trump in there. They'll do whatever Israel takes. And if anything, I hate to say it, but Biden at least didn't do he wasn't brave enough to, or coherent enough to do exactly what Israel wanted, right? But even at that. So we'll see what happens, but my hunch is that the opening shots, the first week, will probably tell if the Iranians hit the way, because they're going to have to hit back hard. They have to make a statement. But the Iranians, I think, if they want to have the moral upper hand, yes, they could do the preemptive strikes, and that would be the smartest thing for them to do. Because if the shoe was on the other foot and it was Iran building up around the United States, obviously the United States would do preemptive strikes, right? The United States uses preemptive strikes to guarantee war. It's like, oh, well, they're going to do this, so we're going to hit them first, right? Which should be illegal. That's it's the most illegal doctrine. It guarantees war, but even worse, it gets people killed on a war that didn't need to happen, right? So right now, basically, Trump is just doing a different version of weapons of mass destruction, right? That's what he's doing. It's the George Bush theory or doctrine all over again. There's no difference. It's just, there's at least most MAGA people are starting to come out of the ether. Like the liberals or the Democrats, what you call them in the States, like most of those people, they're just anti-Trump. They're not necessarily anti-war, because they weren't calling out Biden when he was doing stupid stuff. It's just Biden didn't take it to the level Trump did. A lot of people on the left, though, in their credit, did call out Obama for his fake wars, right? But you're realizing new boss, same as the old boss, they all work for the same bankers in Israel at the end of the day. But this is going to have a lot of unintended consequences, or intended consequences, such as, for example, not only would the Americans take extremely large losses, on the first week, and probably like 58,000 people died in Vietnam, right? On over a 10-year period, right? That's probably what you're going to get in the first day or two, against Iran, because they're going to go for the shock and awe. You know what I mean? Like 250 aircraft versus tens of thousands of rockets and shock and awe. And the only question is just, are the Iranians, are they going to do a measured response? Okay, you hit us, we're going to hit you. We'll sink an aircraft carrier, and not escalate. I don't think they're going to play that game anymore because it doesn't. Why just take out one aircraft carrier when you can take out three and the entire carrier group? Because globally, like if you lose all those warships, by the time you can get more warships diverted to there and the personnel and everything like that, the Iranians have already replenished probably the cruise missiles they'll need to take them out and the drones. Like again, the Iranians are mass producing drones for the Russians. You don't think they're making them for themselves too? We sell 10 to the Russians, we'll build 5 for ourselves. You know what I mean? Like that's what they're doing. Oh, but the Iranians, they've got a whole bunch of problems with water and the heat wave and blah blah blah, and they're on the ropes right now. These people are desert people. You don't get much fucking tougher than desert people. Like they will endure that. You're thinking that this is the first fucking heat wave and economic shocks that they've ever had. In the countries, it's a shithole country. They're always like that. You know what I mean? That doesn't mean fuck all to them. Yeah, they'll bitch about it, but that's not going to slow them down. What are you thinking? But people make these like they just like it's because they come into the story like today and they think they look at all the problems they have. Blah, blah, blah. They've always had these. It's kind of like the Russian economy. Oh, it's doing horrible. And name me a time when the Russian economy was doing good, like ever. You know what I mean? Oh, they're about to collapse. They've always been like that. Like the fucking ruble has always been a piece of shit. You know what I mean? Like, but yet they still function. You know what I mean? Like and Russia functions pretty fucking well considering. You know what I mean? So yeah. No, they're not gonna like a bit of weather is not gonna get them. You know what I mean? Water shortage. No, these people they're gonna endure. But the thing is I think I'm gonna take the one thing about the Iranians. Okay, is you might not like them, but they do tend to be very calculated in how they do things. They're not as calculated as the Russians because they still have that kind of barbaric kind of culture where eye for an eye. Okay, you hit us, we have to hit you back. But they usually hit you back symbolically, right? But limited enough so that they don't escalate. Because if they don't, that's when they will get overthrown, right? But like Israel's out there right now saying, well, Turkey's the next Iran. So Israel's already planning, that tells me that Israel's already planning to take out Turkey. Good fucking luck with that. Now, mind you, I think Israel has a better chance of taking out Turkey than they do Iran. But if just Turkey, and even with the aid of the United States cannot take out Turkey on behalf of Israel. Like, Turkey has a fucking large military. Like, they're the largest NATO military outside the United States. Believe it or not. They have older stuff, sure, but they're even more advanced than the Iranians in a lot of ways. But I think in some ways the Iranians, like rocket forces, Iran and Russia are the two largest rocket forces in the world. Third, maybe North Korea. Fourth, Russia. Rocket forces are a weird thing because the Americans, they've got the HIMARS, but they don't really put like mobile rocket launchers on priority. I've never understood it. I think I think Canada should have mobile like Scud launcher type vehicles. It makes total sense. You know what I mean? Because these things, they can move every 25 minutes. It takes a crew of 3 to fire, a continent smasher. Like, think of Topol M. Like, it's brilliant when you think about it. Submarines are expensive. Topol M is really not that. It's $1 billion a vehicle or whatever. But, something that can be reloaded, and you just you can run the fucking thing off of kerosene. You know what I mean? Like, it's, it is an impressive piece of technology. It's a terrifying. I think Topol M is the most, like, it's scarier than the nuclear submarines and everything, just because you can reload them so fast. You know what I mean? And the fact that, they've got one big missile that can reach halfway around the world from any angle. Yeah. Gee, who's going to win the war? You know what I mean? Yeah. Anyway, multiple warheads, 20 warheads or 12 warheads, whatever it is, it doesn't. The Sarmats, Russia's got it down. So Iranians are just going to be behind them maybe by about 10 years. But the thing is continental missiles, If the Iranians have some, they might have 10. But could you imagine a rocket barrage in New York City or Washington or something like that? That would freak Americans out. But the thing is, I don't even think the Iranians would do that. What I think they would do is like what we saw, 2 weeks ago or a week ago? The Iranian protests. Those were massive. That's millions of people. Out of that, even if it's only one in, say, 100 people are proxies for the Iranian state and decide to do like saboteur stuff, and the Americans will not be able to deal with that kind of terrorism on their home front. Sure, yeah, there'd be a back and forth between Iranian citizens and whatever. But the thing is that America's not ready to fight that kind of a war. Like, we're already polarized enough and everything like that. The immigration thing, I'll get into it on the next one because I got to get going because I got to go get paid. But yeah, so I mean, like, I have no idea when they're going to kick off the war, but it might be also one of those things that they thought they could pull it off. And it's like, okay, let's double down and just move all the assets and scare the Iranians, and then they'll just give us what we want. And then it's like, okay, no, the Iranians, because you got these generals that, like, like your Lindsey Graham, he doesn't care how many Americans die. This guy is one of the most fucking evil pricks on the planet. He's like the next Henry Kissinger, so to speak. Him and John McCain were complete. Hopefully, he's burning in hell. But like, they can't wait to kill people. These are death cults. How does Lindsey Graham keep getting elected? I have fucking no idea. But yeah, like Trump is like buddies with him, right? And the thing about it is that people like him don't care how many Americans die. Trump doesn't care how many Americans die. It's all about Israel. It's always been about Israel. It'll always be about Israel, right? And obviously Netanyahu does not care about how many Americans die. So all the people that are still cheerleading for Trump, it's like, no. It's what's happened is you've got, it seems like a mixture of U.S. generals saying, yeah, we could do this. Iran's a nothing burger. We'll just use our super duper weapons on them and whatever. And then it's like all of a sudden, bang, there's this big fucking mobilization that's way more impressive. Maybe that's what they're doing. So, okay, well, let's see what they actually have. Holy fuck. Yeah, no, we can't take them. How do we de-escalate it? Like, how do you de-escalate it at this point? You know what I mean? Without looking like a complete weak whatever. Because once, like no matter what happens, Iran walks away with the upper hand. Even if they get taken out, like, you can take out every air defense system, whatever, but you'll never stop the rockets. You'll lose Israel. Good riddance, whatever. But like all the Middle Eastern countries, Iran is going to control the Middle East. There's no doubt about that. At this point, it's going to be between Turkey and Iran to see who runs the Middle East. I think what they're going to try to do down the line, but I've always said, like, Turkey and Germany are going to go to war with Greece and Spain backing, and probably Italy backing Germany. But I could see that they might try to get a proxy going between Turkey and Iran. That would be, but it's not easy because they'd have to do it because they're not neighboring countries, close enough, right, to get that kind of a proxy war going. And Iran has pretty much given up on Syria, right? So, but that said, I think Iran's going to take Syria later on, especially after this conflict. Who's going to be able to, once you take out all the U.S. bases and all that, how are you going to supply the Iranian regime, the Syrian regime again? So I think there's going to be a resurgence of Assad 2.0. Or I guess technically you say 3.0 because he's the son. But anyway, we'll leave that for later because we'll have to see how this plays out. But everything hinges on this. So no, you're not going to take out 91 million people and do regime change with 250 fighter jets and 3 aircraft carrier groups. All that's going to happen is just a lot of Iranians are going to die. There's no doubt about that. But my money is that way more Americans are going to die. Why? Because some Iranian running from his rocket launcher truck, he has a better chance than the poor bastard on the Arleigh Burke class or the aircraft carrier. Even if the U.S. drilled for the most advanced aircraft carrier in the world, which is known to have plumbing problems, is now basically you got Randy Quaid on the deck while this thing's docked, sitting there with a hose going, sorry guys, war's off, shitter's full. When I heard it, like I laughed. It's like, yeah, imagine how unpleasant that would be in an aircraft carrier with a backed up plumbing. Oh God, that's got to be horrible. That's got to, like, imagine every like 3,000 to 5,000 sailors just sitting there with fucking green faces. Oh, that's got to be horrible. But that said, of course, the captain's like, no, the ship is still fully, if we have to go to war with the shitter full, we'll go to war with the shitter full. The aircraft carrier can still function. But they're trying to fix the problem, right? But, it is one of those things. It is one of those things. But no, my money is on the Iranian strategy is just more superior. It's not always about who has the best equipment. The strategy, like, it's just Iran is a huge country. It's massive. There's 91 million people versus 7-8 million Israelis and a few thousand, 100,000 U.S. troops. Like, who's going to win? You know what I mean? It'd be different if you're talking about 2010 Iran. They didn't have a military then that was capable. Now, they heard General Wesley Clark go on about, how the U.S. was going to take out 7 countries in 5 years. And the last country on the list was Iran. Well, look, I guess it's going to be 8 countries, and Turkey's going to be the last one on the list. But I think the Turks are too smart to, they already know that they can get ahead of this, right? No, the Iranians, I think the rockets are like the ultimate because they do, like I say, you got your hummus-eating fat Iranian guy, goes out in the rocket truck, hits the big red button, has his hummus sandwich, backs the truck back up into the cave. They reload another rocket. He comes back out in about another hour left or next morning, whatever. It's kind of like Bugs Bunny with the coyote and Ralph, the sheepdog. Morning, Ralph. Morning, Fred, or whatever his name was. Anyway, yeah, that's what's going on, and basically, basically the sheepdog is Iran. Like they're gonna take hits, they're gonna take losses. But again, what infrastructure could you really hit to stop the Iranians from ruling the region? Nothing. You have to put boots on the ground. What, you're gonna paratroop fucking Globemasters and C5 Galaxies over fucking Tehran? Yeah, good luck with that. You know what I mean? Yeah, like, the Iranians, they're not using 223s. They're using fucking FAL rifles there with the, 7.62 by 51. Yeah, you're not going to take them out easy. You're not going to take them out easy. Anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. We'll see what happens. A lot of people think the airstrikes are going to start this weekend. There's been a few U.S. drones already taken out by the Iranians. Again, you got some Americans already getting killed. And that drone strike, too, just one last thing before I go, is that drone strike is a historical first. It's the first time Americans have been killed by a drone strike. Keep that in mind. Mind you, up here in Canada, just so you know, in contrast, Canadian-made drone saved a life for the first time in history. Just so you know, it was done by Canada first. Yeah, there we go. Well, I don't think that was recent, but I saw it the other day. It was like, yeah, the first person to be rescued in search and rescue by a drone was in Canada. Just on a positive note. All right, anyway, we'll go with that. We'll see what happens. We'll go from there. I still think the war's on. It's just when are they going to pull the trigger?